Hey guys, this is TheTopher. Today I am out in Franklin, Tennessee with the newly facelifted 2025 Honda Civic Si. The entire 11th gen Civic lineup has been revised for the 25 model year, but I think the most meaningful updates were given to the Si model. So today we're going to show you what those updates are, and then we'll take this thing out on the road and show you what it's like to drive. It should be pretty similar to the car we know and love. The 11th gen Civic Si is a fan favorite. Tedward has owned one. TheTopher owns a Civic Type R, so we are big fans of this car. But before we get into all of that, let's jump out and let's walk you around this Civic Si. Now, updates here on the outside are subtle, but the most noticeable thing right off the bat is this new color, Urban Gray Pearl, a color that we've seen among other Honda and Acura models for the 25 model year. The MDX Type S I drove down here to this event is finished in this color. Unfortunately, we can't really show it off today because we don't have a ton of sun, but it is a nice shade of gray with some gold flake in it. Additionally, on the front, we have a brand new front fascia on this Civic Si. It's subtle, but it is different. Most notably, this larger grille here at the bottom, and the upper grille as well is different. Headlights are the same, and this design is kind of consistent among the entire Civic lineup at this point. We also have some different wheels on this thing. They're all the same on the SIs, these black 18-inch wheels, and today we are wrapped in some Goodyear Eagle F1 performance tires. So I'm usually not the biggest fan of Goodyear tires, but we'll have to see how these perform here on this Civic Si today once we hit some back roads. And these are a squared setup 235/40 R18. Of course, the Si is based on the sedan architecture of the Civic, so we do have the most room. It is the most practical, which I do like to see. I just got out of the new hatchback hybrid. You guys will see that video in a few days. But let's show you guys the trunk on this. Of course, not as much room as the hatchback, but the Civic does still have a ton of room in the trunk. Underneath the trunk floor, we don't have a spare, but we do have a place where you could mount a spare if you would like. There is a little hole down there to thread in a spare tire holder. Standard from the factory, we get an inflator kit, a goop kit, all of the normal stuff. Not many new cars really come with spare tires nowadays. Little pull tabs right here to fold the rear seats down if you need a pass-through. In the back here, we have some slightly tinted taillights on this facelifted Civic Si, and among other Civic sedans in the lineup, the hatchback is unchanged, but I think they look pretty nice. They're not too dark. They don't look like somebody sprayed Plasti Dip on them, but they're just kind of a nice tinted level. So honestly, on the outside, not a whole lot of changes for this thing, and I think that's okay because I don't really think that it needed too much. Let's go ahead and jump in the back seat, show you what we have going on. Normal Civic Si stuff. There's your pass-through to the trunk. Rear seats fold down in a 60/40 configuration. Let's actually jump in and show you rear seat room. This is of course unchanged, but since this is the sedan variant of the Civic, there is a ton of room in this back seat. Not a whole lot else though, especially in the Civic Si. We do have this fold down armrest with some cup holders. We don't have any vents here in the middle. We don't even have a seat back pocket on the driver's side. We do have one on the passenger side though. I've got my backpack tucked in with all the stuff they always give us on these first drive events to try and mitigate some of the rattling. But otherwise back here, really not a whole lot going on. And with this being a hot Honda, we have kind of a mismatched interior. The back seat gets low priority. We have some red stitching, but that's kind of the only thing back here that lets you know that you're sat in an Si. The front seats are quite a bit more exciting, and we'll show you those here in a second. But let's go ahead, pop the hood, and talk about what is powering this. That is also unchanged for the 2025 model year. This still has the turbocharged 1.5 liter 4-cylinder with VTEC, and it still makes 200 horsepower and 192 pound-feet of torque. You can see that here, no engine cover or anything on this little 1.5 liter as it idles away there. Cool, just an honest looking engine bay, not too much to see, but nice to see that they have kept this powertrain. The Civic Si is still only offered with a 6-speed manual transmission, which I love, but now for 2025, it will rev match itself from second to first gear. So if you're coming up to a stop sign or a set of lights or something, you want to rev match into first, this will now do it for you. We still have the helical front limited slip differential. That is also standard on all of these cars. The way Honda does it is they pretty much give you everything from the factory and you just choose your paint color. And that is very much the case with the Civic Si. There's not too much else you can do. Unfortunately for 25, the orange exterior color is gone. Your choices are now gray, white, black, or red. So if you are an enthusiast of colors, red is your only choice for a bright exterior. Here are our front seats. These are unchanged in design, but not unchanged in functionality. And we'll talk about that once we sit down. Perhaps the most exciting addition to the 2025 Civic Si, heated seats. Those are standard in every car, and it was a complaint that was received by Honda. They took it very seriously. So now we have heated seats in the Civic Si, which, I mean, it needed it all along, let's be honest. We also have the Civic Type R gauge cluster, and I'm not going to be able to show you this while we're stationary, but once we're out on the road, you will see we have these shift lights at the top. We first saw this in the FL5 Civic Type R, so cool to see that here in the Si now as well. A little bit of that Type R influence on the Si. Also up front, we now get 2 USB-C ports. We don't have a wireless charger like you would find in the Sport Touring, but we have a little grippy little area down here for your phone to sit. Same notchy, beautiful shifter. I love Honda's manual transmission shifters, so we'll go out and we'll roast some gears with that today. Individual, sport, and normal drive modes. We're going to start in normal, and you can actually configure your individual drive mode. I've got mine set to engine, steering, engage, and sport, but engine sound in normal, so we don't have to listen to the piped-in engine noise as we do spirited driving. We'll let you listen to it a little bit, but then we'll probably turn it off and just enjoy this 1.5 liter for how it naturally sounds. This infotainment is brand new. This is a 10.2-inch Google-based infotainment system. We saw this first in the Civic with the Sport Touring Hybrid I was driving in Montreal a few months ago. This is carried to the Civic lineup as an option in some, it's standard in others, and 10.2-inch Google-based. It works well. You know, Honda's kind of implementing this in a lot of their vehicles. The MDX I drove down here to Nashville does have it, and it just works really nicely. You know, if anything, Honda has really just dialed this car in to be just about perfect as it seems for the 25 model year. Otherwise in here, we still have a lot of physical controls. We have this really nice physical climate control panel with very satisfying knobs to turn. The best vent placement in the business with the best vent adjustments in the business. I love these little things that stick out of the dashboard. It makes you able to dial in your vent placement just about perfectly. Get these mirrors adjusted. I've only put a few miles on this car so far. Moonroof, and well, we've got 2 central cup holders here with a little bit of a smaller center console, but it is quite deep, so I've got my hat stuffed down there right now. Let's stick this back down into normal mode, and we'll jump out on the road, go for a drive in the new Civic Si. I'll start by showing you our reverse camera. Still not the highest quality, but we do have lines that swivel to help you place the car when you are backing up. Excuse me while I calibrate my brain to this 6-speed manual, but on the topic of that, it is one of the best in the business. Very notchy and direct shifter. Pretty short throws with this 6-speed as well. We're going to run through downtown Franklin. You can see this classic cop car that sits here. Very cool. And before we actually jump out onto the back roads, I want to talk about some other tweaks that Honda made to the chassis on this car. So on the surface, I went through and told you everything that is different. But below the surface, Honda has been in and they've touched different parts of the chassis and the body of the car to make it more rigid. So our B-pillar mounts, the rear door sills, the strut mounts, and some other suspension bushings and mounts have been strengthened for the 2025 model year. And this is actually not unique to the Si. The entire Civic lineup has gotten these updates. So a bit more rigidity in this car, and not to say that it didn't handle well before, but I've driven, of course, the 25 hybrid models, and they handle great. So I'm excited to get this Si out on a back road. There's a very good doggo there. Auto stop start, that has engaged. You can turn that off with this physical button to the left of your shifter. The clutch is pretty light, but it has a very defined grab point. I mean, you guys know all this stuff. You know the way the Civic Si drives. I'm just excited to push this on a back road because I haven't driven one of these in so long. In fact, the last one I drove was a fully gutted race car at Atlanta Motorsports Park, so it has been a minute. I think it was 2022 the last time I drove one when this came out. Just cruising at low speeds. We have a bit more added NVH for the 2025 model year, so it cruises a little bit quieter, but you got to consider these Goodyear Eagle F1 tires and just the fact that this is kind of a lighter, stripped out version of the Civic. This car is still under 3,000 pounds, which I think is impressive for 2025. Weighs in just about 2,950, so it is just a hair under 3,000, but hey, it makes the cut. And this 1.5 liter is very quiet in normal driving situations. And this is one of those cars that you really don't have to push to the limit to have fun. You know, I'm pretty satisfied just driving this car in a normal manner. The 6-speed manual is very nice. Maneuverability, very, very tight and quick steering. It's a bit heavier, of course, than a normal non-sporty Civic, but that's okay. That's the way that it should be. Auto rev matching working an absolute treat. And remember, like I said, it will now rev match first gear for you. We have our shift lights and an audible shift indicator. Fuel cutoff happens at right about 6,700 RPM. Let's go sport mode. This is going to sharpen some things up for us and pipe in some of this engine noise. Felt that limited slip, putting in work there. Yes, all right, let's turn traction off, why not? Let's feel these brakes out. Yeah, really nice progressive feel through that brake pedal. Inputs and overall driving tuning of this car, calibration, all feels pretty much identical to the 22. Coming up on a friend here in a Civic hatch. Okay, let's go up into our individual drive mode, stop listening to this piped in engine noise, and just kind of listen to this 1.5 in its honest form. That is just letting me know how to switch my individual settings. We showed that to you guys earlier. I'm just always so impressed with the way that Honda makes their cars feel so direct. I just got out of that car. In fact, it may have been that exact car, and it was almost as fun to drive on this road. The way that they're able to kind of bring through that racing heritage with these cars, and just, they're such a good time. Let's slow down and try a 2-to-1 rev match. Why not? And give him some distance and catch back up. Seamless. I just love going through the gears, and I mean, this car doesn't really make a particularly good noise. I mean, I'll be honest. It's just a kind of very run-of-the-mill 4-cylinder sound, but that's not why I like this. I like engaging with the interior touch points and just driving the car, the steering, the pedals, the shifter. It's all very direct, very communicative. And the ride on this car is really nice as well. It's not so stiff that it beats you up. It's firm, but it's not crashy. Honda has tweaked the damping just ever so slightly with all of these new 2025 cars, respectively, for, you know, whichever car in the lineup it is, which does pertain to the Si. This is a great road, but it has a lot of big sweepers like this. I think you'd have a lot of fun out here in like a Corvette Z06, something that can just blast these straightaways. While the Civic Si is quick, I wouldn't call it fast. I mean, it is significantly slower than the Civic Type R, but this car is really not about straight line speed. So we don't have automatic wipers on the Si, but a number of interval settings you can do. Everybody say hello to Jacob and Yuri as we flip around in here real quick. Just wanted to give the hatch in front of us a little more distance, so let's go for it once again. This is what you want from a car like this. Something you can take on your commute, take to the shops, and then on the weekend, go and do this sort of thing. The grip is pretty impressive from these Goodyear Eagle F1s. And not only the grip, they're not super noisy either. I mean, this is probably the nicest Goodyear tire that I've driven on. So can't even really say too much bad about that. I don't have any complaints about this car. I mean, I gotta be honest, the only complaints that we really had about this thing have been taken care of. I guess the only thing I could really say is, yes, they've improved NVH, but you know, it's still not the quietest car in the world. And just in ways like over the 10th gen still, I mean, 3 years later, this feels like such a step forward off the 10th gen, which is a car that never really felt finished. It had a ton of rev hang. Rev hang here. There's a little bit, but you get used to it. Just a pleasure to drive. Steering feel fantastic, direct. I have a great sense of what's going on with the front of this car. Lots of confidence to push it hard into these big sweeping corners. I know the limited slip will pull me out unscathed on the other side. The person that drove this before me, they were averaging over 30 mpg. I have degraded that slightly to 23, but still 23 mpg over the last 55 miles of this sort of thing. I mean, come on. Tires don't give up very easily. Bit greasy through here. We will slow our roll. Actual comfort in the cabin here. The seat, it's a bit firm, but it does seem to be quite supportive. This is a fully manual seat. Yes, now it's heated, but they haven't wanted to add any weight of a power seat. I think they want to stay under that 3,000 pound mark for as long as they can. And interior comfiness overall, it's not too bad. We've got cloth wrapping for where we would rest our elbows in a casual driving situation. And they do the trick just fine. All right, guys, well, that has been the new 2025 Honda Civic Si. Looks like we have a bit of an entrance ramp up here that we will, of course, have some fun with. But that's pretty much going to wrap up our little back road blast on this new SI. Meaningful changes. Love the new cluster. Don't super love when it beeps at me, but it's cool to just have these Civic Type R shift lights in this thing now. Don't know that that's how turn signals work, but okay. And quite like the curb weight of this Civic Si, being just under 3,000, this thing is just under 30 grand. $29,950 is our price for 2025. So a couple grand more than it started in 2022, but I mean, the world is the way that it is now. Everything is getting more expensive, and I think the fact that you can have this thing for under 30 grand is pretty cool. There are not many other performance car options under $30,000. I mean, you've got the Kia Forte GT, which is actually a very close competitor to this car as far as power goes, but what you kind of lack with other choices, the Kia Forte GT, what else is there? Oh, the Elantra N-Line, you know, other cars that compete with this around 200 horsepower, you don't get, there's a couple things you don't get. For one, the build quality, the overall niceness of materials in this cabin. And this goes across the entire 11th gen Civic lineup. You get a nice Bose sound system in here. All of your touch points are quite nice. And it's just a level of quality that you don't really get in some of the Korean competitors. Also, just the connected feel with this car. The driving experience is really unlike most other things on the current market. So kudos to Honda for still building proper driver's cars as far as, I mean, even down to the base Civic is fun to drive. I'm not going to call it a driver's car, but it's fun to drive. Civic Si, Civic Type R, really properly fun to drive hot compact cars, which is a segment that shrunk for a bit, but it's back really strong now, and Honda has some of the strongest entries into that market. Cool, guys. Well, that's going to wrap it up for real this time on the 2025 Honda Civic Si. Thank you all so much for watching. Let me know what you think of these new changes that Honda has made for the 25 model year. I think they are all very much worthy changes, and they've all pretty much dialed this thing into where it needed to be. All of the concerns and complaints have been taken care of from previous Civic SIs, and yeah, this is just a really good time, really good experience, really solid entry into the performance compact car market. Take one last look at this thing. Quite a mature exterior, I will say. It doesn't scream at you that it is a performance car. Some people certainly like, but if you want one that screams at you, you can go for the Type R with its big raised spoiler off the back. But this car would be great as a commuter, a daily driver. It would do everything, and it's a heck of a lot of fun on a back road. So again, thank you guys all so much for watching. Any questions you have about the 2025 Civic Si, leave those in the comments. Well, that'll be it for me today. We will see you in the next one. Take care.